What is going on, guys? Today I get to talk about a topic that I'm really excited about because it revolves around my boy X Drake. And before I say X Drake anymore, I just want to put out there that I know it is pronounced Diaz Drake, but exactly the same as what Tekking said when he made a video about X Drake. I think it sounds a lot cooler. Like, a lot cooler than Diaz Drake. So I will be referring to him as X Drake for the remainder of this video, as well as any other time I talk about him. So just get used to it, I guess. I apologize if you, for whatever reason, do not like that. But this video is going to be about how strong I think X Drake is. And I kind of talked a lot about this when I did my video on how I thought he could potentially be a calamity at this point in the series. But I wanted to make a video completely dedicated to just how strong I think he is, especially after the last video I made where I talked about how high I thought his bounty would be, and a lot of that was because of how strong I think he is. I did put him at 900 million berry bounty, so, a lot of people didn't really like that. They thought I was really giving him an inflated bounty. They thought about that for the majority of the people I had on there in general, but whatever, I just wanted to explain my thought process a little bit. I did give Apu and Hawkins like around a 500 million. I gave him 900 million. I'm not saying that he is that much more powerful than them. Not at all. I just think that bounty-wise, they haven't really had as much of a chance to get up there. I do think he is stronger than each of them, but I don't think it's that significant at all. I think they're probably around the same level, at least kind of close to that. So without further ado, let's get into this. So first thing is, pre-time skip, he had one of the higher bounties among the worst generation, which doesn't really mean too much, I guess. It kind of does and it kind of doesn't. But I think it is interesting that it was that high since he was kind of new to the pirate scene. It was 222 million berries, which is quite a bit compared to the rest of the supernovas. I mean, even Laws was not that high, and Kids was probably only so high because of him, of course, terrorizing civilians. So him being that high is pretty significant in my opinion. Now, of course, a big reason that his bounty could have been so high back then is because he was a former rear admiral. So maybe he knew something about the world government, or just the fact that he was a part of them and then he went off and became a pirate, the complete opposite. Maybe they just see that as like a disgrace to the world government, so they put a higher bounty on him. Of course, those are all options, but that's kind of just speculation. As far as we know, he had a very high bounty compared to the rest of the worst generation pre-time skip. So I do think that is pretty significant. He even had a, decent time fighting against the pacifistas, which everyone else seemed to have no chance against. Of course, he didn't do too well, but he did better than most, in my opinion. Another interesting thing is, post-time skip, he was the first person that we really knew about being in a Yonko crew. Like, a lot of the worst generation now is joining up with different Yonkos and whatnot. He was the one we found out first to have done that. Now, I think it technically could be either him or Capone that was first. We just kind of find out about Drake being in Kaido's crew before we find out about Capone being in Big Mom's crew. Which one actually joined which one first, I'm not sure. But either way, he had to be in there pretty early. And I don't think Capone really intended to become a part of Big Mom's crew before he got into the New World, where X Drake seems to have had this whole thing where he wants to get closer to Dofi and get closer to Kaido, like this has been his entire goal since before the time skip. So I would imagine that he probably would have been first to join Kaido's crew. And the reason why I think this kind of matters is, since he is like a commander to some extent, not like not like a calamity or anything, but he's like a sub-commander in Kaido's crew, he probably has had an opportunity to get some action, some battle experience in the New World, as well as maybe some instruction from higher level people in terms of Haki and whatnot. He's probably even had a good chance to get close to Kaido himself. So I would imagine that that has increased his combat abilities, possibly a decent amount. I think it is worth mentioning at the very least. Another thing, the devil fruit he has that we finally confirmed what it is, an Allosaurus. Okay, I am pretty excited about that. I knew it was some kind of like T-Rex kind of thing, but it is confirmed to be an Allosaurus. And another thing about it is, clearly based on what we just saw, we have confirmed, and I thought this was just obvious, but a lot of people apparently did need confirmation. He does have a hybrid form, which, as far as we've seen in the series, generally seems to be the most effective of the forms for a Zoan user. Of course, you have, just your human form. You have the full-on whatever fruit that is, like a full-on Allosaurus we've seen from him. Now he has his hybrid form. And as far as we've seen with the other Zoans, the hybrid is the most powerful. It's basically just like similar to your human form, except you just get a massive physical buff, I guess. So that's pretty good. Now, here's the thing. This is something really interesting. In the beginning of the series, Zoans were portrayed to be pretty powerful because they were basically the first thing we got to see besides a few paramecias, which are by far the most common. They seem to be pretty decent, but then once we start getting to the Logias and the better paramecias, we realize, okay, well, Zoans are pretty weak. They're not really that good at all. It just gives you a little bit of a physical ability buff. However, once we get into the post-time skip time, I think that things do change a little bit. I think that overall Zoans do become a lot more powerful in comparison to the other two. I'm not saying they're more powerful. I think that the gap is just closed a little bit. And the reason for this is because in this series, Devil Fruits are supposed to be kind of uncommon. The higher levels, that doesn't really seem to be the case. But they're not actually supposed to be the main power system of the series. Haki is supposed to be the main power system, right? Because anyone can use that, where not everyone has a Devil Fruit. And really, there's not enough for everyone to have one, I think. I mean, how could everyone in the world have one? They're supposed to be pretty rare. So, with that being said, Haki kind of is the most important thing. It is something that can nullify the intangibility of Logias, and we have someone like Shanks, who it seems to me the majority of the fan base believes to be the most powerful character in the series, doesn't have a Devil Fruit, and he seems to be just super crazy on Haki. So clearly it is the most important thing. Now, with that being said, of course, Devil Fruits like Logias and powerful paramecias are extremely effective, and mythical Zoans are extremely powerful. But I think with the introduction of Haki and it being so important, it does give Zoans more usefulness, I suppose, because you can have someone like Shanks, right, who has his own combat style. He just uses Haki and swordsmanship, I suppose. I would imagine. We haven't really gotten to see much from him. And now, if you gave him some kind of paramecia like Laws or something, it would completely change his fighting style. It wouldn't necessarily just enhance it. He would have to do a lot. He would have to make a lot of changes to his fighting style. And the same thing with a Logia. Those are probably easier to work with. They're closer to a Zoan in that sense that they just kind of enhance your abilities. They allow you to be intangible, and generally they're just overpowered. You could just shoot fire or light or ice or something. But it's still, he would have to employ some different tactics to use these. Where Zoans, on the other hand, if you're just going to use your hybrid form, all it really is a physical increase in power. You don't really have to do anything except your normal thing, but you're just faster and stronger, right? So I think that now, at this point, powerful Zoans that just give you a huge increase in your overall physical abilities are pretty effective, since Haki is the most important factor. And if you can just get an increase in overall speed and strength and whatnot for nothing, well, I mean, that seems like a pretty powerful advantage to me. So Zoans did not get that much respect throughout the series, but I think they are getting more now. And with him being an Allosaurus, that's probably going to be pretty powerful, just because it's, kind of like a T-Rex kind of thing, and those in dinosaur times were pretty effective and whatnot. So I think that he's going to have a massive increase in power from his regular form, his human form, when he is using his hybrid form, and I think it's going to be very powerful. I think it's going to be a lot stronger of a Devil Fruit than most people seem to be thinking. Then also, something else worth mentioning, the saving for last effect is something I've come up with here. So while there are some of the supernovas we haven't touched on too much, like Bonnie and those kind of people, that maybe a Rouge even, for the most part, Drake is the person Oda seems to have saved for last. Of course, we do have Killer too, but we kind of are getting a lot of stuff on Kid, and Killer is like his subordinate, so that doesn't really count in my opinion. But with all these different supernova captains, we kind of have gotten a little bit of information about them, things they're doing, decisions they've made throughout the series. But with Drake, all we really get is that he was a rear admiral, and at some point he decided to join Kaido's crew, probably like immediately once he entered the New World. And that's it. He's just been working for Kaido. He hasn't really done anything that's changed the plot or made any interesting decisions that we've gotten to see. He is the last person we're seeing just now, really. I mean, we even get Bonnie in Reverie, for God's sake. Like, that was pretty huge. He is the person Oda seems to be saving for last. I think that means he is going to be very powerful. I think that means he's going to be a strong character. Of course, I do think he's going to have a cool backstory, too, and that's one reason that Oda's saving him for last. But just generally speaking in the series, as Oda introduces new characters, even if it doesn't make that much sense all the time, similar to how the bounty system works, they kind of just get more powerful the later they're introduced. So I think that with that in mind, that Drake is basically being introduced last among the supernovas, he is probably going to be one of the more powerful. Just thought that was something worth mentioning. Take that how you will. And the last thing I do have in regard to how much, the evidence we have for how strong he could be, I think, is that the X in X Drake, Diaz, Diaz means 10 in Spanish. The X does mean 10. It's a Roman numeral, the X is, and Diaz means 10 in Spanish. So he is 10 Drake, effectively. And, of course, with the ridiculous amount of references to card games and just drinking and games like poker and whatnot in general, of course, the 10 in X Drake's name is related to the card 10, like in Texas Hold'em, I guess. I mean, generally speaking, 2 is the lowest and ace is the highest. But, sometimes the ace is a 1, which is why Kaido doesn't necessarily need to be the ace, like a lot of people seem to think. Maybe he is the ace. I don't know, but I don't know how that would factor in exactly. Regardless, okay, Drake would be the 10 that comes before Jack, Queen, and King, right? Or King being the strongest, Queen, then Jack, and then 10 X Drake. Like, a lot of people just say, "Oh no, he's just 10 Drake. It doesn't really mean anything." How could you say that? I mean, he's in Kaido's crew. He has a 10. He is one of the stronger people in his crew since he's a headliner in the specific group, and headliners are, as far as we know, directly below All-Stars, or as far as we know right now, the Calamities. So he's pretty powerful as far as Kaido's crew goes, and like I said, he's been built up to be this huge character this whole time, and it would be Jack, Queen, and King right above the 10 Drake. So I would imagine that including Kaido, X Drake is probably the 5th strongest character in Kaido's crew. A lot of people don't seem to take that 10 that seriously, but I don't know why. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, guys. Like, he's got to be the 5th strongest person in Kaido's crew, including Kaido. Call it headcanon. I mean, I guess it is at the end of the day, but it seems pretty clear to me. It's not something that's guaranteed, but I think it's a very safe assumption. So, with those 5 points I have made, where exactly do I put X Drake among the supernovas per se? Well, the higher tier people at this point, I would say, are Luffy, Kid, Zoro, possibly Aruj. It's kind of hard to say with him at this point, Law, and X Drake. At this point, since it's kind of unclear where Aruj really is, he did defeat a sweet commander, but he was the weakest among them, and his bounty definitely reflected that. I'm just going to put him at the bottom. And then I do think it is quite clear that Luffy, Kid, and Zoro at this point, since we have now seen the Kid has Conqueror's Haki and whatnot, and seems to be kind of rivaling Luffy with their time in prison, I think that those 3 are clearly at the top. So it comes down to who is number 4 between Law and X Drake. Well, as I've said a lot of times, I think that Law was probably going to be the 3rd or 2nd strongest between him, Kid, and Luffy when he was first introduced pre-time skip. That's what it seemed like was going to happen. But Dressrosa really did a number on Law, and Dofi just completely embarrassed him in so many ways that it made me lose respect for his abilities. And that's not the only factor. Not just has Law kind of come up short a little bit. Up until recently, he did have a pretty good skirmish with Hawkins, I will say. But Drake is, like I said, being built up to be this massive superpower. He is supposed to be the 10 that comes before Jack, Queen, and King. And I even think, and I mentioned this in my last video, I do believe that X Drake could probably at this point defeat Jack. I think that Jack's bounty is only so high, like it was said, because he is going around terrorizing people and whatnot. And I think that, Jack is probably somewhere around Cracker's level. I mean, he is supposed to be the weakest of Kaido's Yonko commanders, and that's probably what Cracker's supposed to be, since he has a lower bounty than Smoothie, I guess. I mean, it makes sense to me. He was the first introduced as well. So I think that makes about good sense, and I think X Drake's right there, right? I mean, I think Zoro would not have too hard of a time with Cracker. I think he'd probably mid to high diff, maybe, Cracker. And I don't think X Drake is really that far behind Zoro. I think Zoro would beat him pretty cleanly, but I think that X Drake is pretty far up there, especially considering he does have the advantage of his Devil Fruit. I think that does give him a big power boost, and with him having a similar kind of combat style as Zoro does, I think he's going to be right up there. So, as far as the Supernovas go, I am just going to have it at this point Luffy, followed by Kid / Zoro. I can't choose between those two. I just don't have enough information on Kid at this point. But he seems to be built up to be like as powerful as Luffy. So, I'm just going to put him and Zoro at like the same level, I guess. Because we have like no feats from either of them at this point. So, I don't know what to do with those two. And then I will follow that with X Drake and then Law. I think that's pretty much the perfect place to put him. Maybe we'll see more from Law in this arc. I don't think that's the case. I think this is the way Oda seems to want to have this play out. But maybe we will see some more from Law and not so much from X Drake. Maybe I'm just totally missing something here. But yeah, at this point, I think that is what makes the most sense. That is where I'm going to put X Drake. Hopefully that's not too crazy. I know a lot of people are really going to be upset by that because they're probably going to think I both put Zoro too high and Law too low. So, what are you going to do? People always get upset when I kind of dog Law, but I still think he's super powerful. I just think that those four are stronger than him. So, whatever. If you're upset with me, just leave a comment. That's usually how it goes. But yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say about this topic. Hopefully, I didn't say anything too crazy this video that you guys are going to lose your shit about. If you did enjoy this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember to leave me a comment letting me know what you thought about this video, if you enjoyed it, if you like these kind of videos, these face cam videos I've been doing lately. I'm just kind of following Drit's advice and trying to do more face cam videos. I kind of like the format. I like the way I go about making these videos. I like the process more than my other ones. But if you guys do prefer those ones a lot more, let me know, and I will either I will try and cut it like 50-50 or something, or do only those depending on what kind of response I really get on that. So do let me know what you thought about this video. I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, a great start to your weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Sunday.